So now I'm going to talk about the actual topic of discussion today, which is direct materials. Who here is coming from the direct materials world? Okay, so most folks, that's great. Our mission as a business, LightSource, is to elevate direct and strategic indirect teams with world-class software tools. For those who don't know the difference between direct and indirect, direct is anything a company buys to put into its product. Indirect is anything a company buys to consume. So for us at Tesla, car parts, we were buying car parts to put into our vehicles, as opposed to, office chairs, desks, soap, that kind of thing. Now, what we do at LightSource, we focus on direct and strategic indirect. Strategic indirect is sourced in many ways the same level or greater complexity of many direct materials. So I actually think these two groups deserve to be bundled together. To address this mission, we've assembled a really world-class team. We are backed by amazing investors, Lightspeed, Bain Capital, which is a $200 billion private equity firm headquartered in Boston. We just announced actually a milestone fundraise event. You guys have probably seen the news. $33 million at $130 million valuation. So it's a lot more cash to play with. So we're not eating ramen anymore, or if we do, we're eating it by choice. And we have an amazing team, a mixture of folks from the procurement universe. Peter Riedistra led McKinsey's procurement practice for about a decade as a partner there. That was a $1 billion franchise, as well as an all-star engineering team. And then our customers really run the gamut from folks like HelloFresh to Yum Brands to Shure microphones to Bombardier, Can-Am Ski-Doo and Sea-Doo recreational vehicles, some big three automotive companies as well. So but the main common thread between these folks is that they are all sourcing meaningful direct materials in their Fortune 500 businesses. Procurement with the right tools can be an incredibly impactful team. People often think about reduction of spend, but other things matter too, like faster sourcing cycles and happier teams, both on the buying side and supply side. These are the wrong tools. So this is like my PTSD slide. These are all the ancient installations of legacy systems or anything that's more trouble than it's worth, the endless Excel spreadsheets and emails. Does this look like the screenshot of anyone's computer? Yeah, for sure. That's the way I've felt many times. And that's why today, 25 years after the introduction of the earliest e-sourcing software, Excel and email are still the number one tool used by procurement teams. And by contrast, the sales teams that we interface with, 87% are using a CRM like some Customer 360 every day. So my goal in life, and I'd like to invite all of you to join this mission, is to make this chart on the left look like the chart on the right. But what it has to be is that we actually bring the stuff. We have to have great software that actually makes people's lives easier and isn't a blocker. But these should look the same. And by the way, this conference room should be in San Francisco, where I live. Dreamforce is one of the big Salesforce, the big CRM, Customer 360. There's 2,500 software vendors at Dreamforce, and there's so many attendees that they have the Red Hot Chili Peppers perform at like a stadium. It's like a massive takeover of the city. So we should get there as procurement because the dollars they sell are the dollars we buy. We're the same size in terms of importance. And that's why we built LightSource. It's a next generation operating system for procurement teams. Conceptually, there are some differences, but also some similarities between direct and indirect. And this is, again, just my own mindset on this. I think there are some core foundational activities that are the same between all of the different areas of procurement. So the questions are, what do we buy? Whom do we buy from? How much do we buy for? Tracking it in payments. And those foundational activities multiplied by what is your unique spend landscape designates a set of processes you need to do. And those processes could be either adhered to by people or assisted by technology. And so just thinking about this a little bit, the what do we buy? Direct, we have EDI and demand planning, right? We're building out a vehicle program, something like that. It was funny because when I first got into the world of procurement software, I heard all about this like intake thing and process orchestration revolution, if you want to call it that. But what is intake? Intake is requisition or stakeholder intake management. That didn't make any sense to me coming from the direct world because nobody was requesting that we buy a steering wheel. It was like, hey, as a company, we are buying strategically all the car parts for a vehicle program as demanded by Elon Musk, right? So there wasn't really much intake beyond his Twitter. And then on the tail, we really have the maverick spend. So individuals going out and doing their work and buying what they need to. who to buy from. Now, of course, like, this will vary based on the organization, but it's like RFX, the supplier discovery. In the indirect side, of course, we'd prefer to have our MSA with the existing vendors. At the tail, it's the preference of the individual. How much to buy for? Direct, we really should be doing strategic negotiations, maybe index-based pricing, so we stay on track. For indirect, it can be framework pricing or rapid negotiation. So it can go from from really strategic to 3 bids and a buy. It's pretty wide spectrum. And then the thing that matters in the tail side is just expediency. Like, I needed this yesterday. And if we pay $50 more or less for a laptop, it doesn't really move the needle so much. And then tracking, there's material planning versus requisitioner tracking this down. And then on the payment side, P2P systems, primarily I see them on the indirect side, Coupa for punch out, stuff like that. Most of our customers, they're using an ERP system. So it's a very different kind of world. And so I'm really trying to paint a picture of a different future for what would like orchestration look like in the direct material space, because really it is not the same as indirect. And so we started with LightSource solving the sourcing chaos problem on the left. So here is how stuff gets sourced to a lot of our customers before we meet them. Engineering will develop a spec. They will email it to procurement. We will email it out to suppliers. Suppliers will have questions that maybe we can't answer. We'll send it back to engineering, say, hey, can you update the spec based on the supplier feedback? Then we'll send it back out to suppliers. Manufacturing gets involved. Finance gets involved. Business stakeholders get involved. Long story short, it's 500 to 2,000 emails sometimes just to figure out who do we buy from and is that price fair? And so we say, let's bring this into a single pane of glass, which is LightSource. It's a new system of record approach. So we actually pull in not from an intake form, but from the PLM. And so that's one of the really key differences, is that we pull in from the PLM directly all the parts and specs in the same level of fidelity that your engineering teams would have them, do all of the RFX and supplier collaboration in one procurement system of record, and then push out to the ERP, the pricing for purchase order over there, which is the finance team system of record. So engineering, procurement, finance, and that's the sort of new vision for a system. But we've had to redraw a lot of lines on the traditional source to contract approach, right? So what we don't do as LightSource, we don't do anything on the ERP or P2P side. So we don't do invoice receipt and reconciliation. Every customer we have already has an ERP, and we are not in the business of trying to rip that out. I want to be able to accomplish these things in the next decade. But what we do is everything upstream of that today is not really covered by any of the platforms today. So bill of materials and spend management, supplier discovery, benchmarking, and cost engineering, e-sourcing, which is where we got our start. It's one of our breads and butters. There's breads and butters. AI contract lifecycle management, and the often forgotten supplier relationship management. The final thing I'll share is that LightSource is actively used in over 100 countries, including mainland China. We're the only procurement platform that has a .cn, that's the .com of China, web address where we serve our front end actually out of Beijing. And so if you have suppliers in China, they will struggle to use any other platform. This is the reason why I can never say politically anything critical of foreign countries for the remainder of my life. But it is amazing opportunity for you to finally get your supply base really collaborating in a more agile way. And so I'll leave you with a few thoughts, and then I want to open it up for Q&A. This is meant to be a discussion, even though I'm doing most of the talking. You never want to be technology looking for a problem. I think that's a very common issue, that people will say, oh, this technology is so cool, or technology providers come and say, hey, you should just buy this thing or pilot this thing. But it really has to be a problem that you're trying to solve, and then be flexible about what's the approach that makes the most sense at that given time. And I'll sort of end with a quick story. Does anybody know who this guy is, by the way? Does anybody recognize this guy's face? Or does anyone know what that product is on the right? Segway. Yeah, there you go. So this is Dean Kamen. He's the inventor of the Segway. And he had come up with this technology for self-balancing handicap wheelchairs. And then he thought, what else can I do with this self-balancing technology? And he thought, we can build like these two-wheeled balancing scooters that go fore aft. And everyone thought this was like the greatest thing. Steve Jobs, John Doerr, famous venture capitalists were funding it, saying, hey, look, this is the end of walking. I mean, it didn't prove to be right, but this thing was $8,000 or more. at market, and ultimately it flopped. And the reason why is that there was no problem that the technology was trying to solve. Very cool technology, inverted pendulum, self-balancing. But could it be solved in a simpler way, like a two-wheeled scooter, which we now see like the limes and birds around? I think this is, yeah. So this is actually the last slide. So, and this is just one other plug for what we do, because we really do focus on the source to contract side. I think this is the place where bona fide AI and bona fide agentic work is going to have the most impact. So this chart is actually from a McKinsey study where they talk about the percentage of time that's spent in each of these stages from source to contract, which is roughly 50%, procure to invoice, and invoice to pay. And then there's an increasing level of automatability. And this actually is from a study from a few years ago. And so this was actually before the big agentic AI craze. But a lot of the stuff that's happening on the left, the spend category strategy and the vendor selection and vendor management, is some of the hardest to automate because it's the least linear. It can really depend on a lot of circumstances, a lot of environmental factors. And so the invoicing to pay process, very linear. In fact, I would be shocked if anyone wanted to put AI into like the payments process, because wouldn't you want to like actually just definitively pay the vendor you intend to? I don't want it to be like hypothesizing the bank account number, right? You don't actually want AI. You want like you just want the truth, right? But on the category strategy side, there's a lot more opportunity to think about using AI and automation when the results don't have to be exactly perfect on the first try.